So, do you recognise those steps? They are, of course, the steps that Colin Firth, aka Mr Darcy, came down in the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, here at Lyme Park.
If you're a fan of Jane Austen, I expect that you recognise the view behind me of the lake and the house at Lyme Park, which is Pemberley in the BBC's adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And you're probably imagining Mr Darcy, alias Colin Firth, diving into the lake. But actually there's so much more to Lyme Park than a set for Pride and Prejudice. The family who lived here, the Leghs, had amazing history of their own. In particular, Thomas Legh. This man was incredible. Before he was of age, he had sailed up the Nile and he became a great Egyptologist. And his first marriage was to a girl called Ellen Turner. And she was involved in a famous abduction case when she was abducted because she was an heiress when she was only 15. And they had to have an act of parliament to annul her marriage to her abductor. And afterwards, Thomas Legh married her.
Thomas Legh, who owned this house during the Regency, actually maybe shouldn't have owned it at all, because he was the son of, well, he was the son of the owner, but his mother was not the owner's wife. Back then, in the late 18th century, the house was owned by another Thomas Peterley, who was a colonel in the army, who was famous for raising a whole load of cavalry very quickly early on in the wars against the French. And Thomas Peterley had a colourful lifestyle. He didn't marry, but he had lots of children. He's reputed to have had 7 children by 7 different women who were typically from the serving classes. And when it came to nominating his heir, he chose the eldest of those, which was Thomas. So Thomas was illegitimate, but he became the heir to Lyme Park. And he took on Lyme Park when he was just 5 years old, because that's when his father died.
When Thomas Legh inherited the estate of Lyme Park, it was in a bit of a state. But Thomas at that time was only 5 years old. And it wasn't until he came of age in 1813 that he was able to start investing money into Lyme Park and renovating it and modernising it. He came back from his travels. In fact, he didn't make it back for his 21st birthday because he had to be quarantined because of the plague. He started investing money into Lyme Park, and he used a fashionable architect, Wyatt, to combine to use new techniques, but to really update and renovate very sympathetically the history of Lyme Park. This is the main entrance of the house, and this has the oldest part in the centre, Elizabethan, and on the sides it's been created into a Palladian frontage in the early 18th century. This is the Palladian south front of Lyme Park, which is facing onto the very familiar site of the lake. There's so much history here in the Legh family, and it'd be a shame if Pride and Prejudice eclipsed that forever.